Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Cast Out Radio Experience Show with your host, Joe the Outcast. On the line with me today, we have Rashawn Evans and Sasha Leggett from the Pure Justice HTX organization, an organization here in Houston that specializes in helping with social justice reform, criminal justice reform, and voter registration. We did a voter registration drive yesterday, which I was happy to be a part of, which we had a fairly decent turnout considering it is coronavirus time. But I want to go ahead and introduce my co-hosts for the evening, Rashawn C. Evans and Sasha Leggett. Say hello, guys.
Ladies first.
Hey everyone.
Nah,
Hey everyone.
All right. As you have seen on Instagram, Facebook, on my personal page, the Cast Out Radio Experience pages, we are going to be talking today to officers, I never did figure out how to properly pronounce your last name.
Officer Stanislaus.
Officer Stanislaus. I'm glad I asked you that because I was about to butcher
Yeah.
it. And then we also have Officer Jerry Pierre on the line, who he is on his way to serve our community right now. So we're gonna keep him on the line with us as long as we can. And if we have to let him go, hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us when time comes or when he's available. All right, guys. So welcome to the show. This is my second show for the month. As I told you guys, we do actually my first show for the month. I keep forgetting it's already October. We do shows every first and third Sunday of the month for an hour or longer if we feel like it, because this is my show and my radio station. I get to do what I want. So if this takes a little bit longer than an hour and you guys have time, please feel free to stick around, okay? All right, so Officer Stanislaus, can you go ahead and give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. My name is Officer Desiree Stanislaus. I've been in law enforcement for going on 12 years now. I love serving my community. I get a joy and fulfillment in wearing the badge and the uniform. And despite everything that's going on, I just want to be the change or help assist be the change that we all deserve to see in our community. And thank you very much for having me on.
And Officer Pierre, if you're still with us, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Deputy Pierre. I work here in Harris County in Houston, Texas. I'm going on my 5th year in law enforcement. I put on this uniform every day. You know, as a black male, I decided I wanted to do something to change what I see in the media. And, you know, it's been a real good adventure ever since, you know, and every day is going to be a new task, it's going to be a new task every day, just to change the views on the public on us as far as law enforcement goes about it. So I'm glad you guys have me here and can't wait to get this going.
Well, again, thank you both for joining us. I know that in this climate of things right now, it's got to be hard for you guys to go to work every day and look at some of the guys that you guys know are bad apples, or, you know, have to deal with the backlash, what happens in other cities or with other officers. People kind of take that out on you because you're clear and present to them. And again, I applaud you guys for standing up and doing what you do, even though we're having these issues that we're having now. As I said, on the line is my co-host for the evening, Sasha and Rashawn. So anytime you guys feel like stepping in and asking a question, you guys go right ahead and do so. So we'll get right into some of the questions that I've gotten through DMs and just conversations with people letting them know that the show is coming up. The first one is, with everything that happened from George Floyd all the way up until this recent revelation of the young lady that was, I forget the exact term that they used in the news story, but basically she was hogtied in the back of a police car. And while she was being transported to the station, she fell off the back seat and was in a very uncomfortable position where she was asking the officer to stop and help her back up on the seat, but he ignored her pleas. And I think it was like a 28-mile drive back to the station where she was basically face down on the floor with her still hogtied, or the term they used was hobbled, face down, face on the floor and feet up in the air kind of thing. And she was asking for him to stop, and he ignored her again, like I said, for the whole 28-mile or so ride back to the station. And, by the grace of God, this young lady didn't die. But so many people are like, how does he get away with something like that?
That story is actually news to me. I haven't heard that one. I know that hog tying suspects has been outlawed in Texas. We're not allowed to do that. It's against policy. It's against the law here. So I'm pretty sure I can say that didn't happen here in Texas, right?
No, I believe it was somewhere in Colorado.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing of that story.
Yeah, me too. I didn't catch that one either.
My source for that one says that this happened in like August of last year, and the news story on it is just now coming out. So that was one that I wasn't sure if you guys had heard about that one or not. Yeah, like I said, this one, the news story on that one just broke like last week, Thursday or Friday. So it's very new for the news cycle for it to be coming out. But again, like I said, the initial arrest and this initial incident happened in August of 2019. So,
yeah, I missed that one. And I'm sorry, in the beginning, I really didn't get a chance to properly introduce myself. I mean, well, as far as like just giving a little background of Pure Justice, and I thank you for the background you gave us, Joker. But I just want to emphasize and put a little bit extra into it, and tell the listeners a little bit more about who we are. And we are an organization that works to bring fairness and equity to the criminal justice system, as well as create economic opportunities for marginalized groups. Sasha, she is the founder. She the one who created everything and put the ball in motion. I push it up the hill. And one of the things that I really love about our organization is that, not only do we work and advocate for fairness and justice and rights, and not only do we work to create the change that we need in our communities, we also do our diligence to work so hard with elected officials, law enforcement, and everyone in office to see, like, how could we actually work together to create the change, right? So it doesn't matter, like who you are, what your political affiliation is. Like, we always do everything we can to figure out, like, what is the best way to create the change for everybody that needs it in the most vulnerable communities, and when we be working, it doesn't matter, like, any little step forward is great, for our communities if we need to move in a certain direction. So if we trying to push something to bring change in our community, we may not always get everything that we want, but as long as we get something. So since we have law enforcement on the line, if you don't mind me, it's like, I really want to see, like, how could we actually, like, pull law enforcement together with the community to actually create these changes we need. Like, where do we bridge these gaps? Like, what is needed to actually, create the change we need from the communities to law enforcement? Like, what do we need to do in order to make policing better in our communities?
And I'll ask that Officer Stanley first. Officer Jerry, can you do me a favor and mute your microphone for me? There you go. Thank you, sir. So whichever one of our officers would like to answer that for Rashawn first, on your opinion, of course.
Is Pierre still on or no?
I believe so. Let me see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
he's
got
still
back
there.
on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just got back on. My service had dropped.
Oh, okay. Well, Rashawn, you want to repeat your question for them?
Well, yeah, I'll make it a little bit shorter this time. I know but no, I was just wondering, like where do we like bridge the gaps between law enforcement and the community? Like we kind of touched on that last time, but if we can give people a little bit more, of how we can actually like bring that ball of unity from law enforcement to the communities, like how can we actually create the change we need by having law enforcement actually on our side, and working with us the way that law enforcement, I'm not going to say the way it was designed, but how can we improve the relationships between the communities and law enforcement?
Well, for one, I believe we can't expect for these things to change and happen overnight. We have to be realistic and understand that this is going to be a process. We all have to be patient. We all have to have some line of understanding for what each other's stance is in this whole relationship, right? So I have to put myself in civilian shoes, but civilians have to somewhat try to put themselves in our shoes as well and get a better understanding of what each other brings to the table. But it's all about community-oriented policing. We've gotten away from that, and we have to get back to community-oriented policing, meaning officers get out of their vehicles, go out, walk their districts, walk their beat, get to know the people in that community, talk to them. Don't just show up when there's a call for service, but get out there and actually just have conversations and get to know people. We have to get back to that.
Desiree, I'd actually like to. Oh, go ahead, Jerry, and then I'll follow up with you guys with a question that I have.
And to touch on what Desiree was saying, I would, it definitely, the police officers and have to get out there and engage with the community, but also it's not one-sided as well. So we have to keep in mind we need the community to also engage with the police officers in their communities. It's all about engaging, not to be afraid of the police. You actually got good police officers out here, so you want to engage with them as well. I'm a strong believer in community policing. And I see that even in my department, we do community policing events, if it's coffee with a cop or something that's in the community, that the community needs to come out to those events and see who's the cops or deputies working their area and engage with them in conversation. Tell them, hey, this is what we would like to see. This is what we want you guys to engage. And it all starts with, for me, I'm a firm believer, it starts with the children, So even on the streets, I like to tell parents, like, hey, when you see a cop, don't tell your kid, hey, get you going back inside. The cops are outside. No, you see a kid, tell them like, hey, there's a police officer. Say hi. Engage them. Don't be afraid of the police. So we also need the community to engage with us and not be afraid. And I understand the stigma of the police and people are afraid right now, but we can't let one, like you guys said, bad apple ruin it for everyone else as well. So there's actually a lot of good people out here that's willing to, do community-oriented policing.
So I wanted to follow up with you guys about this idea of community policing, because I think it can be defined in a multitude of different ways. And then there are also people who really don't understand what that might really mean. So Jerry, you kind of start talking about, getting to know the officers who might patrol or work a particular area. So can y'all explain to us, like, are law enforcement agents or officers, designated to certain spots, and for how long are they to be in that area on a regular patrol? That's one question. And then the other question is, do you all feel like community policing would be more effective if police officers had to police the areas in which they currently live? Do you feel like that would be more effective?
So
I,
go ahead, Pierre.
well, just to touch on that, as far as the effect, the thing about, I know I can only speak for my agency. I can't speak for everyone else's agency. Typically, you're at least 90% of the time you're gonna have the same officer that worked that area. Like my area, pretty much everybody knows who I am, because I go to the same houses all the time. I see the same kids. So 90% of the time, it's usually the same officers, because they don't like changing the officers in the community just because of that reason. The officer knows the area. If there's a call that needs to get, it's a priority one call, we need to get this quick. They rather have an officer that knows the area, that's been in the area, stay in that area. Now, if they promote stuff like that, that's when changes come. So I know it's a lot of people, call the police for only emergency reasons, but sometimes we get non-emergency calls as well. And during those non-emergency calls, sparking a conversation,
Jerry, it's like your phone went out.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, as far as the officers living in the area where they patrol, like for me, I can tell myself, I do live in the area where I patrol. So I know some agencies don't like that just because it's a officer safety issue. As far as, we still have families at the end of the day that we have to protect, and we have to separate our line of work from home, and we have to keep our family safe as well as the public. So some people are against that, but some agencies, they even offer incentives for having an officer live in the area which they work, because it gives the opportunity for community policing to, to where they can know the deputy that's actually working in the area. They live there, so they know them. So I've seen it both ways, where it's an officer safety issue and where it's an incentive where it's like, hey, let's put this guy that lives in this area right here. Usually, I know there's government programs where they actually give home loans to, a deputy that want to live in a high crime area. They'll give them a huge discount on a mortgage or something like that, just to live in that area and have their patrol car, stuff like that. So I do see certain incentives on both sides, so. And that's my point of view on it. I know for me, I do live in a community where I patrol, but at the end of the day, too, it's something where I still have to watch my back, because, I do go shopping in those areas where I took people to jail. I do see those guys, and I am with my family at the end of the day. And we don't know how they'll respond, because let's be real, I took somebody to jail, they may be petty, and they see me with my family and they want to start something, But that's just my view on it. So I'll let Desiree touch on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so community policing and what it looks like, and the whole reason why I think we've not been able to do it or execute the idea like how we once did, was because from the time, and I think I might have touched on this last show, from the time we hit get out of roll call, it's nonstop. It's call after call after call after call. There's no time to get out there and just be kind of like casual in the community, because it's call after call. So it to me, it looks like something that's going to have to be put together, like a special task force, or just another set of not patrol officers, but another group of officers that can actually execute just that. That's all they do, is go out in the community and either walk the beat or ride a bicycle, whatever it is, but get out of the patrol car and just driving through neighborhoods. That's just not enough, just being seen. You actually have to get out there and, like Pierre said, engage the community. And even with the coffee with the cop, we've put on these kind of events time after time after time, and nobody comes out. You only get people to come out when they're outraged, or when something's happened, or when their loved one is personally affected. But if they've never had a bad run-in with the police, it's hard to get those people to just come out and engage with us with coffee for a cop, or similar events to that. You just don't get the community to show up. They only show up when things are bad.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about those events and like how we can learn,
And
like
I
how
urge
are
you
they
to reach out.
advertised?
they're advertised. The biggest thing right now, as far as the world, is what social media, right? So social
Yeah.
media has took over our lives, right? Like, I'm just being honest. Social media.
Hmm.
So police, I know my agency for a fact. Every agency I follow on social media, you guys, people, the community could follow those agencies as well because they do display events as far as coffee with a cop, town hall meetings, stuff like that. I know specifically for my agency, we do have a task force, and it's a community relations task force where it's I think surprised like maybe 10 deputies that all they focus on is community relations, and they do those events, and they have their own Instagram, they have their own Facebook where they display events. And it doesn't hurt for the community to call their local department and say, hey, do you guys have a community or policing division or something like that? There's actually a certification that you have to have in order to become a community policing deputy to get into those divisions sometimes. So they have those, and they get special funding for it just to engage in the community. So it's, I work in an area where it's suburban area. So a lot of the HOAs and, the mud districts, they love to have us come to those meetings. And I've been to a few of those meetings where, like Desiree said, no one showed up. The community doesn't show up. They don't show up at all, And
I mean,
it's
but I feel like if
understandable. It's
y'all
understandable.
partnered like with community organizations, that might be more
Right.
effective. So like,
Right,
for
and that's
instance,
where I was going to. That's where I was
yeah,
going. If we can get the community to say, hey, let's find out if the local police department has a community policing, or let's see who works our area. Maybe they can tag team with that deputy or that division to come together and do something in the community so they can see it. You know what I'm saying? So
So let me ask
yes,
this.
I agree with that.
Do you guys know about National Night Out? Have y'all heard about National Night Out?
yep, we heard about that. I think they're gonna do it. Did they say they were doing them virtually this year?
No,
Cause
actually,
Some
they
agents.
over at the church on Tuesday. But before we get too far off, I kind of want to ask a follow-up question real quick. So with Deputy Pierre, when he talking about the safety of law enforcement, because I'm just thinking as he talking about policing your own neighborhood, because you don't want a crazy to come and do something to you because you lock somebody up, right? So I was wondering, so I got two questions. For job placement for law enforcement, would it be more proper to, like how we go through our background checks before we get hired and we have to figure out who each officer is. So when it comes to placing people in job communities to police, wouldn't it be more wouldn't it create a better policing environment if we actually took people, even if it's not their community, but a community that they can relate to and let them police that community? So for example, instead of bringing somebody to my community to police my community that don't understand my community, policing my community could be problems for the community and law enforcement. But if you bring somebody, from law enforcement to my community that actually understand these type of communities, wouldn't it be better? And then my second question would be for Desiree. I'm sorry, your last name is
Oh, you can. Desiree is fine.
I'm sorry. And I was wondering, would you think it would be more appropriate to have more than just a 911 number? So when we have all these people calling police for all sorts of issues you probably can't even think of, and on 5 hands of all the stuff people call law enforcement for. But if you had like a police number and then another number, say for mental illness, maybe, or just a number like the police shouldn't be called for somebody trespassing.
Right.
That could be somebody homeless. Like if you like change or put add an additional number to, like emergency, like, do you think that will work better in law enforcement, or the amount of calls y'all have, so y'all can actually prioritize what we deal with?
So, I mean, we kind of have a system. The system is already kind of set up like that. So 911 is for emergency only. And if it's a non-emergency, there's a non-emergency number. And then dispatch is our first line of communication. And they're supposed to filter all that stuff out so that there's certain calls that we don't get dispatched to. They'll send EMS instead of us. But for safety reasons, we're still going to go out because we have to back EMS in case things get bad, and EMS is going to need us anyways. So they'll send both EMS and us for like a site call. But you're still going to have us have to go out for safety reasons because EMS doesn't cross train. So they strictly do EMS stuff. They're not going to do police tactics or fighting moves. They don't know any of that. They don't train for that. So you're still going to have police having to go out for those calls anyways. But about the first thing that you mentioned, so I see where you're coming from about if that's my community, predominantly African American community, that I should police that community. I actually think it should be the opposite. For the reasons why you get a Caucasian officer when he first goes out there, it's like a culture shock to him because he's never been in that community. And now he's frightened because he thinks that guy is being aggressive when no, that's just his natural demeanor.
I'm sorry, I probably didn't explain it right. I didn't mean like just swapping races. I mean like placing people into positions they understand. So it really don't matter the color. It's like if I come from a neighborhood that, don't have a high crime rate, I don't understand why people, steal. I don't understand why people loitering, because this is where I come from. So it's like you got people who apply for jobs say that, make it out the hood per se, right. And not a law enforcement. So now if they are law enforcement, they come from the hood, they can understand the hood instead of policing their neighborhood. What if we put them in another neighborhood that's just like their neighborhood that they can understand? Because they can actually understand homelessness a little bit better than someone who, have.
Yeah, but why are we babying officers? We're supposed to be multicultural. We're supposed to be diverse in our understanding. And what better way than to throw you headfirst into a community that you know nothing about? That's the best training, in my opinion. We take cultural diversity every 2 years, and there's just so much you can learn from a textbook. It's best, in my opinion, to just throw them out there. Let them learn by physically getting out there and engaging that community that they're not used to.
So you don't think that could be the reason why some of us actually die? Because of the fear, like they're afraid.
Yeah, but how do you overcome your fears? You have to face it head on. So they need to get out there and see it over and over and over again, not for the first time and then they react. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Like, I don't know if that means like partnerships, and I'm sure that the agencies may do this already, but like they should be paired in a multicultural way. And I think that a part of the training should include the actual like attending and getting involved in the neighborhoods that you patrol, especially if it is a different culture from your own, so that you can learn what the issues are, so that you can become a person that can be trusted, and just kind of start to build those relationships, because I agree with Ro in the sense that fear can cause danger for our communities, and vice versa, right? But at the same time, if these systems are going to change and change for the better, then we have to assist with overcoming that fear, because what can't happen is things just can't continue to happen. You cannot continue to say, oh, well, I was scared, so I just had to do what I had to do, especially if it seems like it's disproportionate to one particular group. So, I think there has to be a mix of approaches.
I'm wondering if, like Sasha was just saying, if you pair an African American, like say you're sending an officer into an African American community, on the strength of what you said, that you send the non African American officer into the African American community, just so he can go ahead, get used to it, get it over with. Pair him with an African American officer so that they can see the commonality between their partner and the community that they're policing, so that they can feel a little more comfortable, and the people in the community can feel comfortable thinking this brother or this sister is with this guy and they're coming in here, he's going to learn how to deal with us instead of being afraid all the time.
I don't know. I guess I just have a different outlook on it. I for one do not feel like we should baby officers. Like you took on this role and you should be able to adapt. I remember going to a call at a mosque, and when I stepped, the guy stopped me and he said, "You can't come in with your shoes on. That's his culture." I had to respect that. I couldn't tell him, "Well, I'm the police and I'm coming in there with my shoes on." At the same time, for police safety, I wasn't going to take my shoes off. So I said, "Sir, I understand and I respect that. Can you step outside and speak to us instead?" So there's a compromise, and that comes with common sense. Like, so why are we pacifying certain officers saying, "Oh, well, they're scared and they're this and they're that"? No, you have to learn to adapt and just go with the situations as they come, and stop saying I was scared for everything. Because I'm a female, I've been doing this 12 years, and I think I've been scared in this job 4 times. Literally 4 times. That's an excuse.
I mean, but if you think about this climate that we're in now, and you say you want to throw an officer in there, just send him out there, let him figure it out on his own. He gets out there and he is scared. Then we have issues like police shootings and things like that, because that officer just doesn't know how to react. He doesn't know how to communicate with those people. This is why I say not necessarily babying them, but like I said, send them out there with someone that may be from the community, or at least somebody that looks like them from the community, so that not necessarily that they don't do their job still, but they still come in, and when they're getting a little bit off the cuff, their partner can be like, "Hey, look, let me take care of this. Watch how I handle these people. Watch how I handle my people, so that if we ever get split up or whatever, you don't have to worry about you saying something wrong or losing your cool and something bad happens."
But I do still agree with Desiree, though. Like, I mean, you voluntarily chose a profession that's inherently dangerous, and I'm not saying don't protect yourself, but I am saying that you signed up for the fact that all situations might not necessarily go the way you want to, and and I'm not asking anybody to be a superhuman, but you cannot just rely on the fact that I'm scared, because then it is dangerous. It is dangerous for everybody. I think about our military, officers. They go into scary situations all the time, but they also have to be composed, and they have to understand what they're walking into and where they're walking into it at. And so I think it goes both ways. And I do agree, like, I'm not, because I don't want people using fear as a scapegoat. And that's how I'm starting to feel what is happening. It becomes a thing. Like, I'm just always scared. Well, damn it, if you always scared, then you need to get off the police force.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, because you mentioned going into the communities, and that's part of it. 20% of our calls are going into the community. But what about just the random traffic stop? You know what I'm saying? So now it becomes, we're no longer in a certain particular community. We're at the side of the road with, may it be an African American, a Hispanic, whatever. So now what's the excuse? Because we're no longer in your community. Now we're just dealing with a human being, a person. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. So now, like, if that's the excuse, oh, you're putting an officer in a community that he knows nothing about. Well, what about on a traffic stop when he's just pulling over a subject?
I think
now what's the excuse?
I believe, and I hate the excuse that I was scared, but I believe a lot of stuff that happened, it all stems from education or lack thereof. So, like, when I was talking about placing people into communities to police that they can more relate to. It was for the education factor. Like you actually understand how things work. So if you actually understand how things work and you are used to certain things, it's less likely that you will use the "I was scared." So even when it comes to pulling people over outside of the community, yeah, it's a possibility you may pull over anybody. That's what happens. It's a random selection, and depending on who you pull over will depend on how you actually handle the situation. And I know it's 2020. Racism is still alive and well. Everybody is not racist, but yet there's a lot of people who still fear the African American male. It's people who fear African Americans in general, but then don't let you be a big brother. So for somebody who is not used to handling a big African American brother and pull them over, they might be afraid because they don't have the education on how to actually deal with people in a different setting.
But
So
that's absurd, though. Like, people should be seen as people.
Yeah,
I,
they should.
That's how I feel. That's just how I know that's not what it is, but the fact that we can start to, like, make excuses about stereotypes, that you're big and you're black and you might be dangerous. And so now I need to give you extra education because you're scared of this person based on a stereotype. It's fucking ridiculous to me. Like, you deal with people, period. I don't care what they look like. You need to understand that they're human and
Yeah,
that you need to
the
deal
scariest
with them on
individual,
that level.
the scariest individual is the tiny female. That's the one that fights us the most. That's who I'm most afraid of, is those tiny little things. The girls, man, they tear you up.
I mean, I agree. Like, for one, any officer that uses the excuse that they were scared, I completely agree. They need to not be on the job. From officers that I've known growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I'm from, they always told us, like, we're trained to handle situations like that. We're trained to be able to keep our cool and stuff like that. But I understand that people get scared. I mean, if you go into a place and there's an active shooter, of course you're going to be scared. I get that. But again, to Sasha's point, you can't be scared because of a stereotype. You can't be scared that because you're going into a Third Ward, a South Park, or something like that, that you should automatically be scared. You should not be scared unless you have a reason to. And the reason and stereotypes and because I look a certain way or because I talk a certain way is not a good reason to be scared to me.
I just want to throw one more thing. I'm sorry, but like that stereotype, you shouldn't be afraid. But I ain't gonna lie. I go in certain places and I be afraid. Like, for example, if I drive out to Conroe, like I don't even want to go out there by myself, like, and I'm in a place where like they don't look dangerous, but then again they do look dangerous. Like the people out there really look dangerous. And it's like every time I see a police car out there, I get scared. Like it really do something to me. Like I don't like driving through it. And it's stereotypes. We shouldn't be afraid of people because of who they are. But yet, when you look at life and how it works, it scares me.
Well, that's the thing for me. You should be afraid of people because of who they are, but only because of who they really are. You can't be afraid of somebody because they look a certain way. I in my past, I had a job where I worked with a young lady, a Caucasian lady, and she had piercings, tattoos, and everything else. Walking down the street, you would think she was like a hardcore hard rock listener, like the kind that they talk about worshiping the devil and stuff like that. This is the way this lady looked. And the first time she came into the job that I was on as an interview, she started after me. I was looking at her like, y'all ain't really about to hire her, are y'all? But after they hired her and I got to know her, she was a completely different person. So again, if you're going somewhere like for us, we go into a white neighborhood like Conroe, and we expect for everybody out there to just be a white supremacist and think that everybody wants to lynch us or put us in jail or whatever. Then we should probably not go there unless we go with somebody from that community that when people from that community see us with that person, they're like, okay, well, at least then they're not scared of why are we out there. And that's my point with having, if you send a Caucasian officer into a certain neighborhood, you send an African American officer. If it's a Hispanic neighborhood, you send a Hispanic officer with them, because then at least when they see that person with someone that looks like them, they're a little less apprehensive.
Well, the thing about stereotypes is they live on because they live up to the expectation of what people say it is. So Black men have a bad rap, and when these white officers interact with them, they prove every single time, every single thing that the stereotype said. So let that stereotype for that white officer, for a Black officer, whoever, let that stereotype one time not live up to the hype of what it is, and that might change the way somebody thinks. Man, I thought that all Black people were bad. I just met with a Black person. They were the sweetest person I could have ever met. Yep. Let that be where we start. Let's start erasing some of these stereotype lines by being better than what the stereotype says that we are.
And I totally agree with that. I've been, if you look at me, I do not look like I'm threatening or menacing in any way, shape, or form, although I can be when pushed. But as people that thought that way about me got to know me, they're like, you're more of a white boy than I am, which is funny to hear. But, you know, because I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I grew up in one of the worst projects in the city of Cleveland, Ohio. But people here that know me and people that know me growing up always knew that I was not a street dude like that. I was not out on the corner selling drugs or anything like that, although I had friends that were. But when it came down to them doing those kind of activities, I was nowhere to be seen. So when people stereotype me and then they have a conversation with me, they get a whole different outlook on me. And yeah, I get lots of times man, I didn't think, Black people were as articulate as you and things like that, which of course starts a whole nother conversation. But I agree, stereotypes have to go. But as long as we do have people that are going to show out, which, as Officer Jerry mentioned earlier, social media has taken over our lives. And as long as there is a camera somewhere in sight, somebody is going to act a fool and boost those stereotypes.
Right. And to touch on what you said earlier, what's crazy is I'm the complete opposite. I'll just be honest. I'm a Black man. I have tattoos everywhere. I have 2 full sleeves. I'm tatted up, right? I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I talk like, I'm from the hood. So, I was denied over 20 applications for the police department when I moved to Houston, just because of the way I looked. Just because of the way I look. So I want the community to understand is just because you see a man in a uniform, you don't know what that man's been through or that woman's been through, or, vice versa. So that's what the stigma, we need officers to realize not every Black man is a bad seed. Not every police officer is a bad seed as well. And that touches on the stereotype as well. And there's a stereotype on both ends that we need to figure out where can we start as far as stopping that stereotype, just like Desiree said. We have to start there.
Which I think we're. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was done.
Oh, well, I was going to say, which I think that also lends to why people don't show up to the events that the police have, the National Day Out things and things like that, because people already have these stereotypes that police officers are bad, and they're like, well, why would we want to go out to do something like that? Which, because of that stereotype that they think all cops are bad, that cops ain't gonna listen to us, and it don't matter what we do because cops don't always feel the same way that they do. people don't go out to the community events from police because they're like, they have a stereotype against them already. And they think, well, they
Right.
stereotype us, so we're going to stereotype them. We're not going to be involved. Right now, I live out in the Richmond Rosenberg area, which they do have, I think they do a day out once a month. They have a Facebook page, and we have officers that live in our community and things like that. Granted, we're not an inner city community. It's still pretty rural out where I live. Where I live now. Like I said, I've been in Houston for 15 years. I moved here in 2005, and just recently moved out to where I live now, where I did see issues of this cops being bad cops. But I also saw issues or circumstances where cops were being good cops in bad situations. I've always said that, just like I say, all Black people aren't bad, all cops aren't bad, all white people aren't bad. But if you have that stereotype ingrained in your head, whether it's from your family, whether it's from your friends, or whether it's from your own personal experience, it's not going to get better until all sides come together and try and fix it.
Right. Totally agree.
Well, I have another question because we've been drilling this one for a little while. Officer Jerry, you mentioned the fact that you have tattoos and that it caused you problems with getting on the police force here in Houston. Do you guys have issues? Like, how do you guys feel if you guys ever get pulled over?
Well, like I said, I grew up in the inner city of New York, right? I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I have encounters with New York the same as I'm a Black man outside of New York, outside of uniform. So for me, I was raised to how to talk to the police, right? So I can't say I never had a bad experience, because I've had, in my opinion, what was bad experiences, but to average, probably, Black men, they'll say that's nothing to them. But as far as, of course, I follow instructions. It's just one of those things. I guess now that I'm a police officer, if I get pulled over now, it's hey, I'm following your instructions. What you want me to do? I'm keeping my hands on the steering wheel. What do you want me to do? Until I can take out my ID and show you who I am, what do you need me to do? I'm not reaching for anything that I'm not supposed to. It's not talking to you in any kind of manner to play with your ego or attitude and create a situation that doesn't need to be created, right? Because like I said, I think I touched on it in the last show. We're human, right? Even though we're in a profession where professionalism has to be there, it's just like any other job where you're going to have people in that job that's going to have their feelings hurt, or they're going to allow you to get they're going to allow the person they're pulling over to get under their skin to get a reaction. So, and we have those officers like that. I'm just going to be real, so I like to tell my people, hey, just calm down. You don't have to argue. Don't play courtroom on the side of the road. I love saying that on the streets. I love telling people that. Don't play courtroom on the side of the road. If you're getting pulled over, do what he asks, get your ticket, and go. Go play courtroom in the courtroom. File a complaint, go to court, deal with the ticket then, because we don't need another situation where someone's ending up on the news because of egos or someone feels disrespected or any of that, So yeah, go ahead.
I honestly agree with that, because of course, I'm not an officer, but in my 9-to-5 job, when I'm not doing this, I'm a supervisor and at my job. And, just talking to some of my employees one day, they may be having a bad day themselves and they're messing up stuff at work, and I have to go and talk to them. And I'm like, hey, look, you messing up. Is it something I can do to help you or whatever? And they come back at me with all the wrath of God, because they're having a bad day. And as their supervisor, I have to learn how to differentiate or keep my feelings out of it and be like, hey, look, I'm just trying to help you. So
Yeah.
I get where, because I've done it too with an officer that pulled me over. I got pulled over by an officer probably about 3 weeks ago that he thought my registration sticker on my car was expired because while he was driving by, the sun blocked out like the last number on the sticker or for the year, and he thought that my registration sticker had expired by like 6 months or something like that, and pulled me over. And I'm like, "What are you pulling me over for? I'm running late for work." And I'm just giving him all kind of attitude. And then I had to check myself because I'm like, "Wait, he's just doing his job. He made a mistake. He walked up, he got my information, everything, ran my plates. He even came back and apologized." So when
Yeah, not even
he
in.
apologized,
Why did he even pull you over?
right, right. I mean, it was, granted, I was probably going maybe 5 miles over the speed limit or whatever, because like I said, I was running late for work. So
There was more to it.
with that and with him, like I said, according to him, he thought my registration sticker was expired. So I'm like,
Right.
it ran me hot for a hot second until I realized, I'm giving this man the blues early in the morning. For all I know, this could be the end of his shift. He might have worked overnight or whatever.
Right.
But let me check myself before I cause more of a problem than I need to.
Right.
You know,
And I understand people say, they tell me all the time, well, it's his job. He needs to keep it cool. He needs to, the professionalism. And I completely agree. We have to be more professional in how we handle a simple traffic stop. I completely agree. But we have to come to reality too, where some of these guys are human. These women are human. We don't know what's going on in their lives, just like we don't know what's going on with your life. Just like how you said, you were in a rush to go to work. Okay, let's explain that. Let's on the traffic stop. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm in a rush to go to work, and I'll do whatever you need me to do. Right? Boom. And I know for myself, I can only speak to myself. If somebody was to say that to me, being pulled over, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Of course, I got to go back to my car, and I have to run to make sure I don't have a serial killer in my car. But then when I get back, I'm giving a simple warning because of how they interacted with me, and say, hey, get to work. Just try to get there as safe as you can. Right? So it's just that, being human with each other, to know that we both don't know what's going on with each other, even though we're, we at the end of the day, we are, we have to have the most professionalism out here on these streets with the citizens, but, I like to give the fair benefit of the doubt where we don't know what someone's going through. And, sometimes it could trigger something, and it sucks. And there's resources out there for officers like that. We have those resources, just like how there's resources in the community for certain things. We have resources as well, but it's the same thing. We have officers that don't want to use those resources, when they're going through something, or, they going through financial problems, marital problems, going through some kind of mental illness or something like that, because at the end of the day, they don't want to go through that. They don't want the world to know, oh, I'm going through these problems, right?
They don't want to be embarrassed behind it.
Right.
I met Officer Stanilus and Officer, I'm sorry if I messed your last name up, and Officer Pierre like a few months ago. And ever since I met them, like great vibe, great personalities. I didn't even know they was law enforcement, and then when I found out they was law enforcement, I said, okay, they are amazing people. And I know we have great officers patrolling our neighborhoods and communities, and I'm listening to Officer Pierre, and he talk about, you never know what people go through. Like some people, they wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Some people have problems. Some
people are just not morning people. Yeah.
But then, I look at the data and the statistics, right? When it comes to, for example, cite and release. And it's like, okay, you got 76% of African Americans actually get incarcerated behind things that they could actually get a ticket for and release. And then you have 13% of European Americans or white people. And it's like, how does this happen? Like what can we do to change this? Like, is there a way, like we could do, like, I don't know if it would be training or what, because I know that all these people just can't be agitating people to take them to jail instead of give them a ticket and release them. Like they may like I would feel much better probably getting pulled over by Officer Pierre than looking at somebody out in Conroe. To be honest with you, like just with my comfort level, like when I see a white person or somebody pull me over in a car, like I immediately think I'm going to jail. It doesn't even matter if I've done something or not. And then when I look at these cite and releases, the statistics of how many times we can actually get a ticket and be released, just to see that 76% of us, we actually get incarcerated, where 13% of white people get like a ticket or let go. It's like, how can we bring some equity to this? How do we change this? Like, what do we need to do?
I know every city has a different kind of cite release. Cite and release is something that we here in Houston just now started doing, probably less than a year ago. So it's one of those things where it has to be a crime that was committed to where it's a misdemeanor crime that we don't want to actually put someone in jail, but they're going to have to go see a judge and deal with the consequences. I know here in Harris County in Houston, cite and release is for theft at a certain number, small minor drug infractions, stuff like that. So, I mean, it sucks to say, it's just that the cite and releases that I've seen being cited are, I'm just going to be honest, it's the offenses that I see most of our people doing, which is, drug offenses, thefts, and I had one the other day and I felt so bad, I had a lady, nothing but 22 years old. She was in Target and used her baby stroller and stole a whole bunch of clothes and put it in the baby stroller, right? But I had no choice but to give her cite and release because Target wanted to pursue charges and they had her on video. But it's one of those things where, I had the option of citing her or taking her to jail. So instead of taking her to jail and getting that baby taken away from her and going through a whole CPS thing, I just cited her. So I know for me, I do like the whole cite and release thing because it's just giving you a minor ticket and then you can just deal with it, go to a judge and probably go take some classes or something like that. But I know some people are totally against it. I think it depends on the area that we're in, because most of the cities, the cite and release is something that's brand new in some of these cities, where it's not everywhere. Not every county, not every city, not every state is doing it. So I think the data they're still trying to play with it. So I think we have to give it some time before it actually gets to a federal level where it's like mandated or something like that, to where we can actually see the data that's working across the whole board, the whole 50 states and stuff like that.
Well, actually, we can see the data here. And I guess I was just wondering, like, why is the number, like, the gap so, like, why is there so much space in between, like, the different nationalities on who actually gets cite and release? Like why? And I know you probably can't answer, like, how every officer operate, but
right.
I just thought that was.
I think it has to deal with a demographic situation. I think, like I said, not every city, not every state, and not every county is doing it. So I think they're putting that program, they're implementing those programs into higher crime areas. Where can we put this program to where we can keep our jail numbers down? You see what I'm saying? Especially for us here in Houston, we implemented that program just a little bit before COVID because we knew COVID, we can't have much people in the jails, right, because of the spread. So they implemented that program just before COVID, maybe a week or two before. So it's something that I believe that they're putting in certain areas, and that's what's causing those numbers that you see to be so high. Maybe it's in the inner cities of Houston. Let's be real. In the inner city of Houston, we have more Black people. We're not going to see it in Conroe. Conroe's doesn't have a program like that. It's usually major cities, and I think that's what it is.
Even with it, despite, like, while there are more people or more Black people in inner cities of Houston, Black people still only make up 19% of the population, the total population. So
Wait,
something
black
about
people,
that, and I don't want to say it's over policing, and I'm trying to not go and say that they're just policing in certain areas on purpose, but I mean that's kind of how I feel, which might be where we're getting these numbers from, but it just seems very disproportionate to the population. I mean, it's extreme.
Yeah.
But it says incarceration shift. So the same divide that you're seeing with the incarceration numbers where African Americans are the higher number, it's going to be the same numbers with the cite and release. I'm not really sure what the expectation or what the outcome they're expecting to get with cite and release.
No, and I think you guys might have misunderstood what Ro was saying in terms not saying that more people were getting opportunities to be cited and released. What he was saying is that more African Americans, like despite the fact that there are all these arrests, more African Americans are not getting the cite and release opportunity.
Oh, okay.
They're just getting the arrest.
Okay.
right?
They're getting the arrest.
Versus
Okay.
other. Yeah. So that's the other thing, and I think what he's trying to figure out is why is that the case? When
Gotcha.
and the reality is what you just said, Pierre, is right. Like these are new programs, and the data that he's looking at is not just the actual program itself. It's just saying that all of the infractions that you could possibly receive a citation for, when you look at the data, it shows that African Americans are actually arrested for those, whereas non-African Americans are either given tickets or let go.
Gotcha.
More often than not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the incarceration problem is this problem that they're still fighting for. As far as you guys, everyone's still fighting for those problems. Yes, there's a problem. More Black people are incarcerated more than any other race. Yes, so that's an issue in itself that needs to be, And I'm a strong believer, and I think that some of these judges and politicians, and to teach its own. Like it's gonna. I feel it's going to get better because I feel people are getting taken down on the federal level that I'm reading into. I feel like people are. It's becoming an eye opener, and seeing the data. Some judges are getting paid for incarcerating, this amount of Black people this month, or sending these amount of women to this MCC or to this Federal Bureau of Prisons, stuff like that. I feel like it's coming to light over the last 2-3 years. But I feel like it's still early on in the game to where we can change it overnight. I feel like it's going to take a long time. It's going to be a process, and we just can't keep fighting, So as long as we keep talking about it and we don't stop talking about it, I feel like it's going to change.
So I have a question for you guys, as we are now like in election season, and we're seeing what's happening in the media and all these conversations about if the elections don't turn out a certain way, what to expect. Are you guys anticipating, issues at the polls or issues, within our community following the election? Like, have you guys been having conversations about that and, preparing how to respond to something like that?
Unfortunately, I won't say we can't. Let's just say it's just one of those things where if I'm in uniform or anything like that, we really can't get into politics. Some policies are written that way to, protect the department, stuff like that. So I know for me personally, I don't like talking about politics while I'm on duty or anything like that. I'll talk to my family or something like that. As far as after the elections, I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think we just have to brace for it once it's here,
And this is not about like political party question. It's more like safety during the elections question. Right,
and that's what I'm getting to. And that's another thing is we don't know what's going to happen after the election. And some people, we may have, small little protests and big protests or riots or whatever may happen. We don't know, because this election, I feel for myself, is going to be a big election because of what is going on as far as the social injustice, all that stuff. So I feel this is going to be something where we do need to, at least the police departments need to prioritize and see how we can keep the community safe as far as keeping the peace, allowing people to peacefully protest.
Well, my concern about all of that is, of course, I know you don't want to talk politics and things like that, but when we have people who are running for office that are encouraging people to do things, unlawful things, because they feel they may get cheated or things like that.
Like
I think,
stand by and stand down and stand by. Is
yeah,
that what you're saying?
I think,
Oh.
yeah, I think that's kind of what Sasha was asking. Like, is there anything in place for if that situation happens where that person loses the election or the election is real close and he wants to call his people to arms? Is there anything in place, or are there
even
any
just
plans getting ready for
intimidation
that?
at the polls? Like, even intimidation at the polls shouldn't be taking place. But I think people are concerned about that.
So
Well, the intimidation at the polls is like, that's a federal crime for people to do that. So I hope that the federal government has stuff in place to be ready for that.
yeah,
Right, and it's a federal.
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
No. I was saying it was federal. I was just agreeing with him. It is federal, and with as far as local governments, the justice of the peace, if he decides he wants to have, deputies out there, and it's just something where they're gonna have to communicate as far as with the local police departments and stuff like that. But it's on a federal level too. So I know it's above my pay grade, so I really can't answer it because I'm not sure. I am not sure, because now we're talking, we're talking.
Yeah,
things that we
but
don't
it's
even.
still ridiculous. Look, we got the federal. We have the top of the office, and it's not for y'all to respond because this is my personal opinion. I don't need y'all to respond. But we have the top of the office telling his own agents to commit crimes, to do things and to use their ability to actually intimidate. And so when we're saying, well, like, this is a federal government issue, it almost makes me feel somewhat hopeless, because if you're telling me that I have to rely on the federal government to ensure that there's no intimidation at the polls, when it is the federal government essentially
encouraging it,
calling for intimidation at the polls. I mean, it just sounds like a problem waiting to happen.
Yeah. Every agency is different. I can speak for my agency. We have not verbally, some things are just, you don't have to discuss it, you just know. But a lot of times we're a reactive agent. Local police are reactive, so it takes for something to happen for us to react. We don't sit down with a game plan. We don't control. Come up with a game plan that if this happens, then what happens? We're reactive. As it comes, how we kind of deal with things. But we've been through Barack Obama, winning the election. We thought it was gonna go crazy, then it did. Thought by changing it over from concealed handguns to open carry, it was gonna be a big old uproar there, and it wasn't. So every time we think something bad's gonna happen, it kind of just works itself out. And I can only, Texas is a beast all in its own. We do things way different from everybody else. I don't think we're gonna see a problem here in Texas. With the civil unrest and all that, I don't think we're gonna see a problem here in Texas.
Well, that's helpful. I mean, that gives me a little bit of courage.
Now, DC, probably, but not here in Texas.
Somebody out there is buying up all the ammunition and all the guns because we can't find none. So somebody somewhere is preparing for this. Somebody is preparing. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I know when I go to bed every night, that's one of the things that I pray for, is that we don't have to deal with anything too traumatic and serious on that note, because I know that, like you said, Texas is a whole different beast on its own, and that if they really want to go ahead and knuck up or whatever, then they will, which it'll be terrible for all sides on that sense. But I agree. I don't think that Texas is going to be that big of an issue, because since we are an open carry state and concealed carry state and all that kind of stuff, that people are going to be more cautious before they just lose their minds like that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we'll be fine.
Good. Well, like Sasha, I'm glad to hear that at least some people that we know that are officers are kind of along with us on that one. Okay. Well,
I know
guys,
if I hear something, you guys will be the first to know.
I appreciate that. Well, at this point, we are, what time is it? 20 minutes after 8. And I know that we said that this was only going to last until 8. But as I said at the beginning of the show, it's my station. We can keep going if you guys like, but I know that a lot of us have to get ready for our regular jobs tomorrow. And Officer Pierre, you are on the clock right now, if I'm not mistaken, or supposed to be heading that way. So I don't want to hold you if you guys need to go. But again, at this point, I do want to thank you for you guys joining the call and the insight and the answers and things that you've given me. I really appreciate the fact that I have both of you here as a contrast and a sounding bell off of each other, as well as answering, like I said, all the questions that we did get to ask. I did have one question from a listener. Let me see, it got knocked down the stream a bit that I really wanted to get to. Okay, here it is. He wanted to know if you guys ever, kind of worded this kind of crazy, if you guys ever experience any kind of racism in your own departments. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we answered this on the last show, but I personally have. I've heard the N-word thrown around. I've heard them say something, and they're like, well, we're not talking about you. I am African American. So sometimes it just comes up, they're careless, but yeah, it has happened. I've definitely been the target of it at my own department, not one now, previously. So yeah.
And like, how do you handle that? Is there somebody that you report that to and they actually do something about it? Or do they just kind of be like, oh, get out of your feelings kind of thing?
It's definitely a get out of your feelings type of thing. It's also a culture that you don't tell. So we work ourselves as officers, as co-workers, outspoken ones. So I don't mind telling somebody how I feel. They'll know if they stepped on my toes. And so nip it in the butt right there. We settle it amongst men, quote unquote. Like we handle our own. I don't go to any
Officer Stanless, you really choppy. We can't hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up really, really bad.
Oh no. Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry. It's where I'm at. Out here in Katy, there's no reception.
Ah, gotcha. Well, from what I got from your from what I was able to get was that you have experienced it, and that you have that it is kind of a get out of your feelings kind of thing. Just go with the flow and deal with it. But I'm sure that you, as first of all being a sister, and being a woman and just standing up for yourself, don't really take it lying down. So I hate to hear that you guys experience it yourselves, but I mean, I guess I also understand that it is very much possible because it happens in my job. And, I'm sure my job is a lot less stressful you guys or whoever you work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me personally, I have not as far as like how Desiree has, but I believe I experienced it more in a way of me trying to move around in my career or trying to promote or something like that. Then that's the way I've experienced it. So there's racism in that as well. Trust me, there is. I'm sure, just like in the everyday 9-to-5 job in corporate America, the people deal with it. I used to work at a bank, and I dealt with it there. So it's the same thing here in law enforcement as well. We're going to deal with it within the police department. Because I'm not naive. I have to. I know this wasn't a career. Let's be real. This wasn't a career for Black men when it was created. So we came in. We're not accepted. And to this day, some agencies are still not accepting Black people, or still, even recently. I'm not going to throw agencies' names out there. If we go date back to the early 2000s, you could look at a local agency where they were actually in trouble because they were throwing away Black applications in the trash. So, and that's recent. That's 2000. So, yeah, I've dealt with it in that kind of manner, and I'm not naive. My eyes is open. I see it, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm a believer in documentation, so I said that in the last interview where I document everything. I feel that I'm highly qualified or something. I need explanations. I learned that from being denied 20 times and finally realizing why I was denied. Well, I didn't look the part. I had tattoos. I had sleeves. That's me being racially. That's you being biased on why you don't want me to be a part of your police department. So I've dealt with it in those ways. And that's just my story.
Well, I'd like to just commend you guys for continuing to do the work you do in those spaces, because that's really hard and challenging to, commit to a job. I assume you love, because you're still there,
Right.
to do the work that you do under some of those kinds of circumstances, because I know that in itself could be demoralizing, because it's just, it's a really ridiculous reason for things to be taking place, all because of race. Not because you're a terrible person, not because you're not qualified, not because you've done anything wrong, but simply because people have racial biases. And that's really unfortunate, but it is commendable to know that at least 2 good officers are still in their agencies despite those unfortunate circumstances.
I agree.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time out to do this with me. I again, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate this. I'm glad that you guys were able to get on here and talk and answer the few questions that we were able to get to. At some point in the future, I may reach out to you guys again and ask that you do this again, just because I'm sure that there are questions that we would have liked to have gotten to, or other things that you guys would have liked to talk about. But again, Officer Stanislaus and Officer Pierre, Roshan, and Sasha, thank you guys for joining me. And we're going to go ahead and sign off and let my station go back to its normally scheduled program. All right. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, guys. Good night. Thank you guys for having me.
Real quick before y'all go, Joker, Officer Stanislaus, Officer Perry, and Sasha, y'all continue to be great. I just want to take y'all to be great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, bro.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys. Bye.